Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest this morning, Miss Katrina German. How you doing, Katrina?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for coming on. You got on my radar as you were named one of the top 25 women in tech in Canada for 2025. I love the girls over at Toast and the whole organization, what they do, and BetaKit as well. And so my social media goes, hey, I bet this would be a cool person to talk to. So I love to just be like, that's the world, right? It's 1 degree of separation. And I've always taken the mindset of the more we raise each other up, the better this whole community is. So with that as our launch off point, you are the founder and CEO at Ethical Digital. So what's an ethical digital? Let us into the tent and let's go from there.
Yeah, that's a fine question.
Nice.
My background is really, I have had technology companies in the past in the marketing space. I have a marketing company. And as I was watching a lot of how the ecosystem of technology is created, I was like, there is some fundamental issues going on just in terms of how we're creating the future. And what we're seeing, technology is influencing every single industry. It is creating the future as we speak. And so as I've been developing and been in this space for many years now, I started to realize we need to focus on actually creating an ecosystem that is inclusive, that we can actually have everybody creating that future and contributing to what that looks like. And so yes, Ethical Digital was born. So we have our digital marketing services. That's our bread and butter. That's what keeps us going. And we make sure everything we're creating is inclusive. We work with companies across Canada, and really love that space because we're able to really get incredible messages out into the world and change some mindsets. We also do a lot of research. So we've researched how to get more Indigenous women involved in technology, how to get more women involved in venture capital, which funds the internet. So maybe we could see some different projects being created. We've also researched, and we're in a big research project about how social media affects well-being. And so
we could talk for a couple hours just on that one right there.
I think we could get into any one of those topics.
You're giving me so much gold here.
That's right. And then we really move into corporate training, because I'm a strong believer that if we want to see changes in the internet, we need to make sure that corporations and businesses are educated in terms of what some of these impacts of where they're putting their money is, because they're the ones who are funding the internet with their ad dollars and just investment and purchase power. So a lot of people, when they're thinking about the well-being on the internet, there's a lot of focus on kids, which as there should be. There's a lot of groups who are focusing on, different areas of the internet. But I personally believe that one of the areas that we need to focus on is educating business, because again, they're the ones who are funding things, and we need to make sure that people understand where they're putting their dollars, and hopefully they're voting with their dollars in terms of what kind of society we'd like to see in the future.
You caught on a question that came up earlier. You kind of answered it partially. When you say inclusive, that's a big word.
It is.
And, obviously there's the memes of the tech world, the tech bros, the vest culture, a lot of those things. But you said, obviously women, I have a lot of friends that are involved and work at the 51. So I've had them on the show. So very familiar with how do we get more of that female activated capital and startups because by default, they will bring different companies to the table. So for an organization like Ethical Digital, where do you start and where do you stop? Or is it more about just where you focus, which you kind of did mention in your intro?
Yeah, well, we have some focus areas, like we are worried about the mental health and the inclusion places, as well as unregulated spaces on the internet. For me, the big thing is there's kind of 4 people who influence the internet as I see it. The first is the people who are actually creating the internet. This is the startups, the larger companies, the technology creators themselves. Okay. There's the people who are funding the internet. This is our IRAPs, our corporations who are putting money into being first clients and all that kind of thing. Then there is the people who are using the internet intensely. So this is a lot of our marketing groups, influencers, people who are spending a lot of time online and who are actually shaping and creating content, which is a small proportion of the population. It's increasing every day, but it's when you actually look at the users, which is the 4th group.
Is there a number in terms of contribution? Because I know it used to be like 3% of people contribute and 97% of people are voyeurs to a certain extent.
Yes.
Is there a number? That was a long time ago. I don't even know if that's like most stats is probably made up. Is there kind of a split there? Because you kind of touched on it right there.
I think it's increasing as everything's becoming more accessible. But I remember actually hearing that it was about 1% of people who are actually creating content, about another 10% of people who are consuming and engaging and actually interacting with it. And then the rest of them were lurkers. And so again, I don't know if that still equates. That's an older statistic as well, but it is definitely a smaller number of people who are actually creating content for the internet and really engaging.
I do like your split though. There's creating, there's engaging, and then there's just voyeurs.
Then there's the people who are just consuming. Yes,
just consume. That
And
1% though, that one, or even if it's 5%, it's a boatload of content. Like it's out of control to a certain degree, right?
Yeah. And AI just put that through the roof. So, having this human-made content is going to become very priceless here in the future.
There's a lot. That's a powerful question. And sorry, I cut you in the middle, but I was curious because that old stat popped into my mind about who contributes versus who consumes. And
absolutely.
Because I know as a content creator, that interaction is what you crave. Like, they clicked on it. No, they commented, they added. It's almost like that. The heckler at the comedy show where they want to be part of the show. When you can get a post that triggers people wanting to be part of your thoughts, whatever you put out there, you kind of struck something. And then some other times it's crickets.
Yes. Well, I always find no matter what content I create, there's lots of times where I'm like, ooh, this is gold. This is really going to get them. And then, like you said, crickets. The next time you're like, I'm just going to toss this out, move on. And you go back and look a couple hours later, you're like, whoa, that really got people.
And there's so many layers to that. That's a whole other podcast about what gets played and what platform, what channel are you on? Anyway, so I'll let you finish. I love a good list. So you had tech, you had who's funding it, you had who's the users, and who's the fourth.
Yeah. So the second was actually who are the basically the main users, the people who are heavy users, I would guess. But the fourth is just your average user. Those are the lurkers. Those are the people who are going in.
Yeah, but kind of the 89% for the sake of our made up stat.
Exactly. Yeah. And so really, the people who are in that user and that space, they're the ones who are most affected by a lot of this and the most affected by the mental health pieces and, all the different things that the algorithms can do to impact us as humans. And yet they probably have the least amount of power out of those four people, because oftentimes as consumers, almost, they're the product. They're the ones who are actually like, creating,
if you're not paying, you're the product,
media,
right?
The ads, all that kind of stuff. And so I do truly believe that we should focus on the business side because those are the people who are funding a lot of times what's going on and putting their money into those places. But also they're, creating. They're the ones who are thinking about this next version of what we can be doing. And so hopefully we'll actually start to see as we start to educate people, just some of the impacts of what's happening there and small changes that we can be making to actually make the internet a better place. We are the foundational generation who is creating the internet, and it could be thousands of generations going forward who are using it. And so, we don't want to ruin it right off the bat. We want to make sure that what we're creating and putting out there can actually do what the internet was, the ideals of the internet, which is, helping to educate people, helping to make people feel more connected, less lonely, finding communities, all the good things of the internet. If we can enhance that and reduce some of the things that are having huge impacts on us as people, I think that we're going to see just a better foundation that we're creating for the future and what we can become as humanity.
Is this just, also the speed, right? Because if you look at the original, the origins of the internet was the DARPANET, which was a military communication platform, and quickly got propagated into like a transaction and communication. And like AI today, which we'll park that over here for a second, the speed at which it moves versus sometimes how we move, right?
Yes.
Just to say, like, I like what you said, like, when's the moment that we get to take a pause and go, whoa, okay, we've got to here, good, bad, or indifferent. Let's not play the blame game, but let's move forward. The speed at which it came on, and, AI is another one that's coming on at such a rapid pace. I read an interesting article and they said, the internet was better set up to be safer than what AI could be, simply because there was so many rules and protocols put in place because of where it came from, versus AI, again, has existed and developed. And all of a sudden, when ChatGPT opened the floodgates, it felt like that. It felt like even more of the Wild West. For when you look at your work, how do those two things balance? Because obviously you can't talk about the world of digital media or the digital landscape without these new augmented technologies that I would argue are making it worse from the perspective of speed and reckless speed and not maybe knowing, like, I just pulled the trigger, but I'm not sure what's behind it. Like, I don't sure where the bullet's going to go. Right.
Well, and I think
look way over there where it's going to hit.
And that's the thing, is nobody really understands, right? Because we can't predict the future. Every single person, even Sam Altman,
we're notoriously bad at it.
Of OpenAI, he's saying, like, here's what we hope, but we don't know. Like, we're
while he throws a code red at his team and goes innovation at all costs.
Yeah. Exactly. So
I think there's been many a plot line in a movie that was innovation or whatever. We must win at all costs. And often the plot twist was very negative.
yes, yeah. And what
Not
you'll
to be
see
doom and
too-
gloom, but we're talking about both sides of this conversation, right?
Yeah,
Making
no, I
sure
just
we
did
don't
a
get there.
presentation in Ottawa about whether Canada's AI policy is helping or hindering our economy. Is it actually moving things forward or is it moving forward? So I really appreciated the opportunity to actually do that study. It's something I'm interested in. It was kind of looking at, peripherally, but to do the presentation, I really dove in. And, what we're seeing in terms of the actual uptake of AI, there's so much talk about it. It's part of almost every conversation that I have, but yet we're actually seeing the people and the average public and the uptake is actually quite low. It's beneath 15%. And we're not just here in Canada. Yeah, it's not just here in Canada. It's in Europe, it's in the US. And of course, like there's studies everywhere, right? And they're varying all over the place. But, our population is having about the same uptake as around our comparable countries. What we're also seeing is in terms of the actual investment and that sort of thing into these different technologies from the government perspective, Canada's quite a bit behind, in terms of the US and China. We all know that. And the US is just dwarfing China in terms of the investment that's gone into the AI.
Well, that's kind of the arms race that those two companies are
exactly.
in on multiple levels. This is just another level of it, right?
Exactly. And the US's policy is called winning the AI race. Like it's intended specifically.
It's right on point with the current administration's rhetoric. But anyways, that's another conversation.
Yes. And so we're not going to be able to compete, in that kind of a game. But when we're looking at other like EU countries and that sort of thing, the amount of investment that we put into AI is actually fairly comparable. And so what I think, when we're looking at those particular pieces and talking about it, it's one of those things where there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of people concerned that there's going to be an AI bubble because there has been a ton of investment that's gone into it and all that kind of stuff. And yet the uptake by people has been a bit slower than expected. But I also believe this is just sort of the early market tumultuousness that we're going to see of just things trying to figure itself out. I think we're going to see huge jumps in terms of people using AI. We're going to see all these different changes that happen. But I truly believe that in Canada, we're in a really unique space right now. And there's a lot of focus on tariffs and the way that that's impacting business. But for me, I'm like, anytime there's massive change, there's also massive opportunity. And there's always people who win out of certain situations. So if you are like looking at this from the status quo of like, holy smokes, everything's changing, that's really scary. It's really intense. And again, we don't know what that future looks like. So it's hard to make decisions because we don't really have any goalposts in which to be making decisions towards that, and, a clear sense of where we're going, that North Star. But I believe actually in Canada, there's an opportunity right now. And this is, if I was in government, here's what I would do is I would actually be looking at certain areas that are important national priorities. So even let's just take small business for an example, which rarely gets looked at. It's often energy and different things like that. But small business is one of our biggest drivers in Canadian economy. If they say, for example, we see QuickBooks decide that they're just going to stop service to Canada. That would be devastating for Canadian business. And we've seen this before, like Facebook when Russia invaded Ukraine, Facebook, Pinterest, all the big guys had their comments and they voted with, a lot of them were pulling back their services from Russia in order to do that. But remembering too, when they're making those decisions, that's because they're shareholders. The people who are paying for their stuff are comfortable with that. They're making a business decision. Whereas, but they're getting a lot more power in a lot of cases, probably than even Canada in those types of decisions. But the idea behind government is that, they shouldn't be moving as fast as technology companies, that sort of thing. They need to be thinking about how things impact the people in the country and the overall future of what the country looks like. So they should be moving a little bit slower. But really, right now, I'm like, there's an opportunity here to be investing in things like, okay, we need software as a service for Canadian companies that are specifically for our accounting. We need some of these areas that are just service industry software. And I know there's probably some out there, but they're certainly not as big as QuickBooks. So how do we actually put money in and make sure we're targeting different areas of our economy to make sure that we do have some winners and we do have some backups and we actually are starting to invest. So this Buy Canada thing becomes a very realistic thing that we can be doing in terms of creating a bit of sovereignty when it comes to our IP and when it comes to what we're creating for the future, and making sure that we're safer in terms of, because I think the geographic issues are going to continue, with the different governments that are in right now, especially to our neighbors to the south. We're going to be seeing a lot of this happening. And, instead of reacting.
We're not playing nice in the sandbox together.
Exactly.
Right?
Instead of reacting, what I would be doing right now is I'd be looking at every industry and saying, what are the core technologies that are being used right now in those industries? How are we, I would take bets on Canadian companies and start putting money specifically into those companies to grow and scale them so that they're safe, so that they're ready, so that they have data centers here, so that we actually can be in a position where we're not going to be affected by the outside as much, because we can see now it's made us vulnerable. Nobody saw that. We're so interchanged, the technology.
Well, this is the sovereign compute conversation, right? Is really what you're
exactly
to a certain extent. And I like what you said about QuickBooks. That's an interesting one to me, because obviously you've got commercial viability of such a big entity with Intuit and who runs that. You'd have to see the government in the short term, and that becomes like, where does the government fund? And I'm going to use the word prop up a little bit, because a Canadian startup would struggle just because they didn't have the economies of scale that something like a QuickBooks and their infrastructure has. That's a tricky balance. But you're right. If they got turned off tomorrow, and you're making me think about, and I know it's a specific group, but Australia just turned off social media for 16-year-olds and under, effective tomorrow. I think, we're tomorrow being the future. This is a podcast. So it's already happened by the time we put this live. But I think what's tomorrow, the 10th of December, I think that's the day when they turn it off. And you're right. Somebody made a decision at the government level that then dictates what Meta does and what they do. And all of a sudden you've got a whole group of people now that can't connect with their friends. To them, it's a trauma. To them, it's like life just ended. But now apply that at a business level.
Yes.
And, we work with some large multinationals, and we work with their Canadian divisions. They have very strict policies on where's the data housed. Is it housed in Canada? Is it housed south of the border? And you're right. If we don't stay commercially viable there, all of a sudden we can't cover our own need for a vaccine or need for a data center. Like it all starts to fall under that same kind of mindset of like, shit, we didn't tend to our own affairs.
Exactly.
Just to lump a bunch of things together, but it's all kind of the same. We're left going, oh no, we're on our own as the walls go up and the isolationist conversations aren't going away, right?
Exactly.
We're moving away from globalization right now, certainly from a rhetoric perspective. What really happens in the long run, I don't know. It almost doesn't seem viable, but we have relied so much on cheap something from somewhere else. Exactly.
But we're an energy people. Like that is one thing we have in abundance in Canada is access to energy. And, so that's something too, where again, I feel like we're a bit behind in terms of the infrastructure and different pieces, because these are huge capital projects in order to create these data centers or, even the transmission lines required for different pieces.
And these are multi-year. You're not thinking about what happens.
This is not going to be done tomorrow.
And it's not one election cycle. It overlaps election cycles, which is often problematic, right?
So we're behind in that. So, for me, I would actually also be thinking about investing in alternatives. So one of the things that I think is interesting is right now we've all just kind of accepted that, AI takes a ton of energy, that we're going to be doubling our energy usage, all that kind of stuff. And, it's amazing to me that the environmental groups aren't just screaming right now. Maybe they are, and I'm just not hearing them, but it's, we've been talking about this like environmental question forever.
They're still spending more yelling at Alberta. And I'm going to pick on, a little bit where there's this big, kind of black, like this shadow that's falling over of like the energy consumption, the stats that you read around AI, it's out of control.
And nobody it's seems only to growing. Be looking at
We're
it.
like in a sci-fi movie. We just haven't realized it yet.
Exactly. It's already happening. It's already happening. And so for me, I think there's alternatives to this. So for example, like China came out with DeepSeek, which it requires less processing power than.
But it capitalizes on top of other platforms that are already using the power. So that was an interesting move on their part.
Exactly. It really
on
is.
so many layers, right?
And again, they've been investing in this for a while, all that kind of stuff. But there's different people, like when I was out in Ottawa, there's a group out there who is like really focused on edge computing and different things like that. And there are some options out there potentially and so for me, I think there's an interesting, flag to plant here around the idea of like, what if Canada invested in, and there's a lot of other countries doing this is not unusual, but investing in our own AI processes, but we really focus on making sure it's environmentally, the processing power required is less. And so we actually put some money, we put one of those challenges up or whatever to be like, all right, let's crowdsource this response and see what we can do to actually create a system that, we can be building on as Canadians that actually just uses less power and become the world leaders in terms of that. So that we have other countries coming to us in the future, not just to get our energy, but to actually coming to us and saying, hey, we want to build on what you've done because it's, it's just better for everybody. And, it makes more economic sense as well as environmental sense.
And when you're in Ottawa, is there an appetite for that sort of thing? Is it at the rhetoric level, or are people saying, no, we actually need to focus on this? And
I think
I've been in a
more,
few panels lately, and there's the sovereign compute conversation, because everyone kind of goes, "Ooh, we're not sure," and it gets really weird because there was a politician on stage, there was a big scale projects guy on stage, and he's like, "We've got the tech, we can build big shit." He basically was his position. He goes, "But we're just so reluctant to." And then the government guy kind of backpedaled. It was a weird panel. I've kind of watched it. It's like, oh, this is a juicy topic, because everyone got really uncomfortable really quickly.
Yeah. Well, I often think too, a lot of the people who are in these spaces in government often don't understand the innovation space. Like, it's really a personality thing. If you're a person who's drawn into government, you probably have more of a conservative, just in general.
I'm an elected official. I'm not a technology or energy expert. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Versus somebody who's like, let's run, let's go, let's build something. And so, and again, we need all sides coming to the table around this, but I do think we need to have some pressure coming from the innovation community saying, we need to move fast. We need to give, we need your help to do so. We can't be working through programs that are coming from a government perspective, because that's not going to work. We need to work together on making things move fast and quickly so that we can get these things in place, because again, government is actually there on purpose to have that sober second thought, right? Like, they're there to think about things. We actually don't want a government who's just, it's happening in other places right now, but we don't want a government who's just like off the top of somebody's head, here's the new policy.
We all know who we're talking about. Yeah. No, absolutely. But also, government's also there, in my opinion, to make things, like when something is identified that that's the right thing, and maybe that's the problem, whose definition of right thing, they should also be able to smooth the road out a little bit.
Exactly.
Versus adding more red tape or speed bumps or whatever metaphor you want to use. But to get consensus on the right thing almost seems like everything is a political football right now. It feels like, no matter what, where this should be a universal, no, this should be a bipartisan conversation, but nothing's a bipartisan conversation.
Exactly. Well, and that's the problem too, is we're like, I think we're just losing opportunity every day when we're kind of waiting and thinking and being like, well, let's let somebody else show us the way. And that's, it tends to also be
nobody really wants to take the risk, right? Because it could be a career ending, party ending move, right?
Yeah. Whereas
meanwhile, 13 years later, we've not done one single capital project, and like some of those stats again, it's kind of embarrassing.
Built. Yeah, exactly.
Which is the difference of government and private business. You just go to business, right? If you put it that way.
You just go get it done.
You just go away.
Yeah. And maybe it's something too, maybe there's a different way of doing this. Like, we've talked for years about the investment capital and, and how investment just isn't as strong in Canada. We're a lot more conservative here, all that sort of thing. And so maybe this is something where it's a little bit different. Everybody's holding onto their money right now because everybody's afraid. There's not a lot, there's not a ton of stuff moving the economy right now. But what if we made it so juicy that we could actually get, put together some sort of tax credit or something like that, that's so juicy that we can actually let private industry do what it does. We could put some guardrails around it from the government perspective.
Well, you message IRAP, you message Shred, like, how do you take those programs and go, okay, what about these works really well, and how do we make them a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit more at scale? Because you're talking about fairly large scale here when you're talking about data centers, and obviously because you're in Saskatoon, right? We didn't call that out. Most of my guests often are in Western Canada, more Alberta.
That's right.
What do you see between what's happening in Saskatchewan versus even Alberta or BC, or like when you look across, because you're spending some time in Ottawa, what's your point of view on terms of on a provincial? Because I know we're going all in on data centers here in Alberta. Certainly that's the rhetoric.
Yes.
I know things are still take time, right? Permitting and environmental, if you say yes tomorrow, there's years before you actually put shovels in ground.
100%. Well, and I'm lucky too. A lot of my clients from the digital marketing side are in the clean energy space. So I monitor that area as well. And so what I feel like is that Alberta's certainly taking a lot more of an active approach. And also you have a lot more engaged investors in Alberta. There's just a lot more of a culture there. And also, you've had a lot of successes there. So you've had the kind of the spillover effect of having a much more healthy, I would say, and robust investment structure within Alberta. Compared to Saskatchewan. But we're working hard. Like, we've got a few different groups who've popped up here. Like, Startup TNT's really they've really put a strong, flag here.
I know those
they're
guys
doing
really
great
well.
work with the investment and really making it accessible to a lot of people and really getting it out there. I'm on one of their advisory committees, so just a disclosure, but it's, I'm also an investor. I've also been on the recipient side.
You're involved, Katrina. You're involved.
I'm involved. Yeah. So anyway, Startup Team
not just talking about it, actually getting involved in it, which
exactly. No, I just believe women need to be doing more investing. A lot of us have been socialized to think about philanthropy if we make more money and things like that. And, it's also just an area that a lot of women aren't as familiar with. So it's, a bit scarier to come in and, put your money out somewhere in investing in technology. But yet it's also one of those things where, it's very, very risky too. But it's also one of those things where if the returns come, then you have more money.
Yes. And it is the perfect, it's about portfolio theory, right? How you don't put it all in, you put some of it in and you get involved. And there's often opportunity to get involved. And if you've got experience to like some of that advice, like Calgary's done that so well, like it's almost too complex. I feel sometimes there's so many startup funders, and then there's people for mentoring, and then there's they've got a lot going. The wayfinding in the startup tech space is challenging, I think.
Yes,
because there's so many people
because there's too many opportunities, which I love.
I know, which is that's a success problem. I joke.
Yeah. I love that. In Saskatchewan, we're a little bit different in that because we're a smaller community. Like I think our population is 1.2 million in total through the entire province. And
interesting. Calgary now I think is like 1.5 or 1.6.
Yeah, exactly.
I moved here and it was 800, which doesn't feel like that long ago.
Yeah. So our community actually is really of the idea that we all rise together, and so we all take care of each other. Like there's a lot of people who are connecting each other, and so really when somebody enters into the community, it's really almost like we're small enough that everybody just kind of like, what do you need? How can we help you? Who do you need to talk to? And that's the beautiful thing about Saskatchewan is every person's one phone call or two phone calls away. That's
interesting because I would say the same thing about Calgary, like biggest small town ever. You're one coffee away from meeting someone who can change it. Like those things are real. I grew up in Montreal. I grew up in Toronto. That was true, but in your group, if it was another group, getting into the other group was hard. Who's your uncle? Who's your dad? Who's your mom? Like, who do you know? And where I moved to Alberta, and sounds like Saskatchewan very similar, which makes sense. I grew up in a small town, and that's much more how a small town operates.
Yes,
if you do good things, people give you more opportunities. If you're the person that doesn't pay their bills or does shady stuff, everyone knows that too, right?
Exactly.
I think I like the both sides of that sword. I think it's honest.
Me too. Me too.
Only 1.2 in the whole province. I didn't know the numbers, but you literally all know each other. And that's not even a joke. That's not even an oversimplified, because Alberta, once you get into the scene, it's 1 degree of separation at the most. Like you're one coffee away. But I don't know about you. It sounds like it's similar, where people actually will follow up. If someone says they're going to introduce you, they actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you checking your numbers now?
I just checked my numbers just now and we're good. Yeah.
Okay. I saw the look in your eye. I'm like, she is double checking right now, folks. So we don't have to edit out this whole section of where we got the numbers wrong.
Yeah, that's right. We're good.
But the follow through, and I think that sense of community where it's like, oh, you know what? I can't help you, but I know someone who can. And then I actually will follow through and do the intro. That is a superpower that I think happens, and we're going to give Western Canada the credit for that. Yes. I don't see the same way in Eastern Canada, unless you're already kind of in the clique, right?
Yeah.
But then you're already in, and that's different, right? How do you get new people on board? Yeah. What are you seeing with female investors? Obviously, someone who's a female, who's super active and engaged, and you're out there. Do you have women reaching out to you like, I'm curious, but I don't know, and like, hey, can you help me? And like, is it that grassroots? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, a little bit like that. I think also it's just not even really part of a lot of people's radar, right? Unless you're from technology and talking about it and that sort of thing. Like even people in finance, a lot of them, like, we studied venture capital, and a lot of people who are going to school for finance don't even really know that that's an area of finance, in which to study and learn from and move into. So it is, and it's a relatively new industry, actually. It was kind of, in the 50s, 60s, who were, coming together and basically.
But even in Canada, that was a pretty tiny community up to even Alberta. When I started the podcast back in 2019, it was a little pocket of conversation, and you'd have a fund over here. Now there's multiples, and it's I always joke, we had concentric circles, they just weren't touching. Where now they're starting to overlap a lot more in the last 6 years than they were before.
Yeah,
especially and the venture is the fuel for the engine, right? Someone's got to throw some money at these ideas, or it's just an idea on a napkin.
And that's exactly if you want to scale, right? And it's just you need it. A lot of times just your funds that you require to scale are going to be more than you have at that point. So it really is an important part of the structure of building a technology company. But again, it's just an area a lot of people don't understand and have never really heard of. You maybe hear of an angel investor and you're like, ooh, that sounds really cool. But maybe a lot of people don't even understand. You
understand the Hollywood version of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it is its own unique area. So I think it's mostly like there's a lot of education that needs to happen just in the general public around those particular pieces.
That inclusivity that you mentioned right at the beginning, it's hard to be included in something you don't understand.
Exactly.
Because you self-select, right? You just pull yourself back because like nobody likes to feel dumb. No one likes to feel like they don't know things. But the only way to do it is to get in there and say, hey, I don't know things.
Exactly.
I have found,
Teach me. Yeah. Let's work together on due diligence. Let's do these pieces.
So when you're from a marketing perspective and you're messaging, are you working with some companies specifically? You mentioned you work a lot in the clean tech space, probably other spaces, where that more inclusive message just makes sense. Because a lot of companies, it's just not on their radar. To the same, I think everyone would nod and say, yes, I believe in that, but yet it doesn't always the rubber doesn't always hit the road. So when you're working with your different clients, are you often guiding them or making suggestions, or are they coming to you because you're an expert in specifically that type of messaging?
Do you know, it's kind of a bit of both. We have people who are coming in and others. I think I just read that about 40% of the big enterprises in the 500 are, they have actually purpose statements on their website, you know, so they're actually a group. And we had like 2-3 years there where people were talking about being respectful and taking care of each other.
It was very trendy for a while, and it seems to have been less. Hopefully it's just become the way it is. You know what I mean? It starts to just settle back.
I hope so too. Yeah. For me, I've been doing this forever. I've been a social impact entrepreneur. I even, you know, when it got training, I was like, this is my time. You were doing it before
it was cool. Yeah, I got
exactly.
You. Yeah,
and I'm going to keep going when it isn't cool. For me, it's just about respect. It's just about
But hopefully it just becomes, like you said,
just a way that we treat each other.
System.
And there's risks too, right? If you're offending accidentally in the communication space, you're, you know, someone in Toronto putting out a tweet that accidentally offends somebody in Northern BC, there can be actually issues for that for your company. Like there's, you know, there's. Is
there a problem though when we get so safe we stop meaning anything?
Yes, definitely. And
sorry, that was just a pointed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably the main argument against inclusive language, right? Is are we watering down everything?
Does it become so vanilla that it doesn't even, it's not vanilla is Lisa flavor. What if it becomes plain flavor?
Yeah.
Oh, that plain flavored ice cream, joy.
Exactly.
Come on, maybe throw a little bit of vanilla in there, something maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. No, for me though, it's really just about, you know, just it's a style of writing, right? It's just a way of putting things out there that are just going to, you know, instead of saying like you and us and all that kind of stuff, like it's really about that join us. Let's be a part of this together and that type of communication. And
which still allows the people that want to join you to join you, and the people that don't. Like you still have to stand for something, but it doesn't mean you have to be shitty to anyone else who doesn't stand for the same thing you stand for.
100%.
And I think that's really kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're welcome to join us, but if you're not into it, that's cool.
That's cool.
Don't throw darts at me, and I'm not going to throw darts at you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so, no, it's an interesting world because, again, it's also very political. There's a lot of people who, you know, felt like it went too far. You know, you couldn't use certain terms and that sort of thing. And, you know, for me, it's not easy. Like I grew up in small town Saskatchewan. There's a lot of terms that I just have that I had no idea were offensive.
You and I both grew up in a small town, so no need to explain any further.
And so
every once in a while, a family member will say something innocently.
And
you'll be
it's
like,
not easy to change your language, but it's 100% possible. And like I've had to work hard on it, but it's good. And so for me, it's less about it being vanilla. It's mostly that I just want as many people as possible to be able to hear my message. And I don't want to be turning people off of it because I'm only talking to 50% of the population who believe in this direction.
Turning them against you. Turning off is one thing. Turning them against you is another thing. To me, like there's a fine balance. Like, because you got to be willing to make a stand. But do you have to attack somebody to do it? That's, I think, I think that can go away.
Yeah. But it's just volatile, right?
You talk about social media, like the polarization, the psychology of how easily we are triggered as humans, and how much we can get manipulated by, like, oh, you see a sentimental video, and then you see something that makes you mad, and then you see something that's trying to sell you something. Like there's a formula and a pattern to get us to react. That, to your point, even when you know, you can still get caught. I'd like to think advertising doesn't work on me, but it does.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Every time I get pulled into something hard, I'm like, sweet, what did they just do to get me there?
Yeah, how did I? Totally. What was and that's a reality. Like, how do you balance that? Yeah. When you're right, that's not even a human on the other end. It's an algorithm now that can influence and manipulation. Those are dangerous words. Yeah, but can manipulate me at a speed that I'm not even chemically able to stay ahead of. Well, that's very real in all levels of messaging, right?
And that gets into a lot of our social media and well-being pieces, right? Like, I think you and I are of the generation that I remember not having the internet. I remember not having social media. I remember not having a phone on me all the time, all that kind of stuff. And so
tell the audience we're older without saying it.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when I thought the internet was a fad and I wasn't even that into it. I'm like, and now it's like, it's Liz. I got two giant screens in front of me. Like, good God.
Remember my brother-in-law?
Yes, I do remember that. Yep.
Yeah, at the time, he's like, you need to try this thing called Facebook. And I was like, listen, I got fax, I got email. I'm like so overloaded.
Yeah, I
just can't even think about trying something new, and here we are.
So that is the truth of that, the speed at which it happens, and when you get into the ethical side of things, Talk to me about, like, we joked a little bit, or we made a comment about Australia, and you're not allowed, if anyone hasn't heard, social media platforms under the age of 16. I've been in a couple executive groups, and a couple times we got onto it, and there were some moms and dads in the room that were like, I had a 12-year-old daughter or son that loved life. Now I have a 15-year-old daughter or son who's suicidal.
Yes.
And like, no joke. And like these are CEOs and high power people literally breaking down, going like, I don't know what to do.
Yes.
And they very squarely put the focus on social media just as a broad brush. How does that fall under your world, where I'm assuming a lot of the companies you're working for, clean tech, you're not targeting youth, but it's still the world of digital, just dot. I'll just stop this going digital.
Yes.
How do you balance that? Or is that a conversation? And again,
This
as a human being, it's got to be on your radar.
Yeah, this is a significant conversation. I have two kids too. My oldest son is 20 and my youngest is 17. Okay. And so I raised my kids right through all of this, from the
onslaught of when it was coming on, right? Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, like, there was a whole thing there with baby Einstein where it was like, watch more TV because it's going to make your kids smarter, and things like that. And so,
well, now it's park your kid in front of AI for 4 hours. And
well,
let
exactly.
them be your teacher. I don't know if I want Sam Altman to be my kid's teacher, but anyway,
yeah, no, exactly.
Sorry, now I'm poking directly at someone. But.
Yeah. So I actually had more of an open policy with the internet than a lot of other parents, because for me, I wanted to have the discussion constantly of like, what have you come across in this game? What, and try to keep that conversation open, like have, that kind of thing. I don't think I was successful, I'm going to say. Like, I'm also not saying this is the way to do it.
I appreciate your honesty, Mom. I appreciate your honesty. and potentially you were more informed or better set up than some because you work in the space, right?
Well, I could talk about it, and even thing like sextortion, when that was coming out for teenagers, it's still a big thing. So I'm constantly saying to my kids, I'm like, do not put pictures of your penis on the internet ever. Don't text it. Don't ever, just don't do it. Because
saying it out loud, it sounds like such a bad idea, but now there's the AI. Like, I think, do you know Krista Hill?
No, I don't.
Krista's anyway, sorry, shout out. Krista's a fabulous thought leader in Calgary, came from the product space, but's been really leaning on AI. And she had a post the other day. She's been on some local media, and it was like, okay, your kid gets a nude AI driven photo of a classmate. What do you do?
Yes.
Like, what do you do? And she's like, this is a real thing. And I'm watching, I'm going, wow, like as a parent, like it's not hard enough to have a 14-year-old.
Exactly.
To your point about don't put a real picture of your junk online, but what about now AI? And you go Nana Banana, you can make a picture of anything. I've never tried to make a penis picture, so I don't know if it does that.
Yeah.
But she's like, as a parent, like how do don't be mad at your kid when they tell you this happened. And she kind of had this quick little moment, and she's a mom as well. I think she has her 15-year-old daughter. But I was just like, holy shit, it's not hard enough to raise a kid.
Exactly.
And now you're dealing with this world that we're all perpetrating and use every day, right? Mm-hmm.
The thing I would do is actually, if I was starting, if I had younger children right now, I would read Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation. It's an amazing book that actually he's done a ton of research, goes back and forth, and he has several recommendations. I actually think a lot of these decisions to ban social media and stuff are probably coming from some of his recommendations.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But, there really is this idea of like, different age groups, what you should be doing. And he actually kind of lays it out for different age groups based on some of the data and research that he's found. And I think that we really need to be looking at that in terms of what's appropriate for different age groups, and also how we're talking about that digital literacy. Like, to me, like, dealing with the sextortion and the different things, that's a really big deal. And that's something that a lot of teenagers are going through, but, we don't want our younger kids to be exposed to that, all that kind of stuff. For me, the biggest danger, and I think this is actually one of the biggest dangers to society, democracy, everything, is misinformation and not having the world experience in order to be able to say, this is correct, this is incorrect. When
something
AI
that you and I might be able to dismiss, yet alone, we still get caught. We're I would say we're informed, and I still get caught sometimes.
Me too. Yeah, you get caught. You get those moments, and someone's like, "That's not true. There wasn't millions of dollars put into that," and you're like, "Oh, I missed that."
I've been trying to really take this like, when is it causing me to react and not allowing me to reflect? And when I catch myself reacting, which is sometimes very enjoyable, a little dopamine, a little serotonin, a little fired up, and then you're like, "Wait a second, I just reacted to something. Who's benefiting from my reaction? Where?" And that takes a lot of discipline.
Yes.
Like, I make it sound all easy, like it's a button I throw. It's no, not always. Let's be clear.
Yeah,
it's messy as F.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. It's very complicated. And so
misinformation. And that's only getting amplified based on the technology now that you can. I know even 6 months ago at the agency, someone would go, "Oh, look, an AI photo." And we're all like, "Yeah, it still looks like AI." The other day we had a need to do a photo shoot for a company way up in Northern Alberta, a big trucking company. And they sent us one of their trucks. Here's a photo. My creative director goes, "Okay, I'm going to really take a shot at this." Half the photos, I couldn't tell they were AI.
Yeah.
Like, and it was a static photo. It wasn't anything dynamic, but six weeks ago, it felt like that was still like, oh, it had an extra wheel or something was still wrong.
Yes.
Where all of a sudden, and now you put that on top of bad actors, bad intent.
Yes.
Oh. We were just trying to duplicate save a sending a photographer to Northern Alberta in the winter, which is a legit thing to do.
Yes.
But at the same time, now that photographer maybe isn't going like the impact of that as you strand the whole thing out. It's significant.
It's massive. And in our agency, like for myself, I've seen it. I had 18 people at one point, and I'm down basically to a designer because I need that extra help sometimes. But a majority of stuff I'm doing through AI, and I think my job has been changing to basically vetting. You know, is this realistic? Is this correct? Is this
using what you've now earned as a lifetime of experience? The challenge is you and I have learned that the hard way, maybe, hopefully.
Yes.
And we're still learning. That's not learned, it's learning. But I'm 22 and I'm working in marketing now, and I don't have that critical thinking, I just don't have that as much time on the field, right?
Exactly.
I don't mean age or anything like that. I don't want to be ageist, but if you've got 20 more years figuring something out, you're probably going to be able to go, I think 80% of that is actually bullshit.
Absolutely.
But when you don't, you can get sucked in so quick. Like we all do to news articles and things where we don't know the rest of the story. Yeah. But you do have that too good to be true, or wait a second, what's going on here? But that is, as you said, being exposed to media for a lifetime.
And what we're going to see as well is that, and we're seeing it already, is that a lot of our young people are having difficulties getting jobs because they were usually the ones who were coming out of work and taking the entry-level jobs, doing research for this, finding that together. So we're already seeing this in several industries where we're seeing a lot of our young people coming out of school with kind of not that next step. And not only is that money, that they need in order to start their lives, but it's also it's really that, how do they understand corporate culture? How do they understand how to go to the office or whatever? How do you understand how to work and become an adult and spend all those, those next spaces?
Well, because that human interaction should arguably is becoming more valuable, because when you need it, you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to deal with people not going along with your idea and all those things, that no matter all the tools that you have, sooner or later, I've still found not much in my life happens without a relationship somewhere with another human being.
Yes.
Maybe I can show up better prepared with more information or the thing, but sooner or later I'm interacting with somebody, and I don't think that's not going away tomorrow or even the next day. I agree.
And one of the things we're going to see too is, I believe that, the market, something's going to fill the void, right? It will become a new thing in some format. Right now we're just going through the birthing process of what this looks like, and
the uncomfortableness of it.
Yeah.
And like you said, we're running to the future faster than we've ever run, but no one there's no playbook.
Exactly. And so really it's one of those things that when you think about what this looks like for everybody, there is going to be something, I don't know whether that's more government funding into having more students, being employed, or whether that's, basically we have a different role for students in the future who are coming out of school.
Because there is a real gap. There's a real gap that's happening right now.
Yeah. But I do think this is going to be a problem for the next couple of years. It's going to be really big, and it's going to be a big impact on the Canadian economy too, because, having an entire generation who's having a tricky time finding work, like that affects a mindset, that affects, a lot of people in the way they feel in the future.
It's how revolutions happen, right? If you want to look back in history.
Exactly. People who are unhappy and not having their needs met. Like, this is a big time of flux and change. And honestly, the biggest skill you need right now is resilience. Every day something's going to happen.
Resilience, adaptability. I am a big proponent of curiosity, because at least get curious about it, because you might figure something out, but shutting yourself down and being a little open to going, hey, even as a senior, as someone who's been around, I don't know, sometimes is a tough lingo for people in our generation.
Yes.
But you have to say that, because if not, you're lying.
Yes.
Like you don't know. Nobody knows. I'm the leader, so therefore I will strode in and have I remember during first year of COVID, we do town halls, and or the first 6 months. When are we going to get to go back to the office? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this weird default of like, you're in a leadership role, so you get asked these questions that, be honest, say, I don't know, but let's get curious. What do we know? And how can we look at this in a different way? And something was running the creating space and taking time gets really tricky with tech, because it's just the speed.
Yeah. And even, we work in this industry, and what I found, actually, what I've been doing is Friday afternoons when I maybe have a little less steam, that's when I play. And,
nice. Play is I think that's a really powerful word.
Yeah, because it's just like, oh, I heard this amazing thing about this website creator. And honestly, by the time this is aired, who knows, right? Maybe there will be a website creator out there that's just absolutely amazing that's actually hitting it. Whereas right now, I'm seeing some really great content coming out. I'm seeing occasionally a really nice design, but it's just not there yet. I would never launch.
The promises are big. The delivery is low.
Exactly. There's no way I would launch some of these websites that I'm just creating instantly. Not a chance. It's just incorrect. They're,
but the vibe coding, the access it gives, people to go, hey, I just spun this up as a prototype. And I think that's the mistake sometimes happens with companies that maybe aren't that sophisticated as marketing. They see a Lovable as an example or whatever.
Yes.
They spin up a mock-up and go, look, we did this ourselves. I'm like, yeah, but you can't do anything with this. It's actually
exactly. There's nothing.
But it lets me know where your head's at, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like if you give me a scrap of paper with something sketched out, we're not going to publish that, but that's a good start. You can do that with technology, and I like those things, but just remember where they fit in the journey.
Exactly.
Now I'm commenting to everyone who we work with, our clients.
Yes.
Please bring us your harebrained schemes, but it's okay that it's a harebrained scheme.
Exactly. Yeah. You've kind of mocked this up. Let's look at it that way.
Totally. Let me give me an idea what's in your head. And I've had a lot of leaders like on it. Like I got frustrated and I just got working with myself. And here's what because oftentimes leaders, sometimes we're not the best at communicating what's inside our heads.
Right.
And if you can go fool around with a Lovable or whatever, or just get a mural board and sketch it out with sticky notes, I don't care.
Yeah.
But using some type of technology to get your idea fleshed out, I think that's 100%. A really powerful place that to your point, play. That's accessible. We redid our website a couple years ago, and my team was really busy. And you know how it is as an agency owner; like you only have so much time to do your own stuff.
Exactly.
So I was like, I'm just going to go to the cabin for the weekend, and I'm just going to spin it up. I'm going to go on Reloom, and I'm just going to build this thing out.
Yeah.
And my team was like, oh wow. I'm like, this is nowhere near a website, and it wasn't even where we ended up, but it got us going down the road.
Yes.
And as an iterative tool, I think that lots of different technologies are powerful. But they're not quite the end result just quite yet.
Exactly. I love the way you phrase that. Because for me, I look at it too, like a lot of the things I'm using AI for right now is just sort of my brainstorming, just kind of going through 100%. And being like, hey, I'm having this thought and I'm playing with it. And I want you to take this persona and let's have a little conversation about it. And I want you to tell me. Oh, it's so
fun. I love that so much.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let's go there. What am I missing? What are the gaps in this argument? What are the, because I think that's one of the biggest things, when we talk about having diversity within companies, I think, when I talk about diversity, I don't mean it just in terms of cultural or gender. I think of age diversity. I think of geographic diversity. I think of a lot of different pieces because it makes our company
different
stronger.
Cultural backgrounds, different value systems, different religious beliefs.
Communication styles.
What that fuels different ideas.
Exactly. And you see different risks in different ways. And so I always loved doing that with my team before, which is, this is not a directive that I just want to play with this idea. Let's talk about this. I want you to tell me what, there's funny things, funny small things. Like when and I had people in Ontario, for example, we were doing some work with SaskTel, and that's a Saskatchewan telecommunications.
Yeah,
it's our crown.
Yeah.
And so it's our biggest area where we get our internet and telephone. And so we were all just so excited as a team. Everybody from Saskatchewan was just cheering, we get to work with this group. And then the people from Ontario were like, who's SaskTel? And I loved that. Yep. I love that moment because it was one of those things like, we had achieved this thing, whereas it was a good eye opener to be like, no, it's just another group.
And you brought your biases and your, like all the things to the table.
Exactly.
And being able to look at something with a fresh set of eyes is really challenging when you've been around for a while.
100%.
My eyes are full. Yeah. My brain is chock full of biases. And guess what? No, I'm not always aware of all of them.
Yes, exactly.
That's a nice theory,
100%.
but
what?
it's like,
You're human?
I'm familiar with my blind spots. Then they're no longer your blind spots. What about the ones you're not familiar with? Like the way you acted in that meeting the other day.
That's right.
Tyler.
That's right. Yeah.
That's where the curiosity always is like, why did I act that way?
Yeah.
That was, I don't think that really added to the outcome. I love that perspective of like, we're so excited because we understand we're from here, and people from Ontario were like, Sask who? Like that's
exactly. Like
so, the questions they would be asking, which might seem silly to you Saskies,
yes,
are legit questions, which are probably the ones you should be thinking about.
It made our deliverables better. Yeah,
and I think that's where diversity sometimes gets an oversimplification of a corporate scorecard of like, oh, we have this much gender and this much race and this much. I want different thinking. Is actually what I want.
Yes. Absolutely. And we used to do 16 personalities. It's similar. There's so many different personality things out there. But the thing I like about 16 personalities is that it's free.
Accessibility is huge, right? Sometimes.
Yeah. But, like we would actually try to hire for people who were in different communication styles than us because being in marketing, you're going to get a certain personality who's just going to be drawn to that industry. And a lot of our
the
clients
outgoing
are in
among
different
us,
industries.
Katrina, the outgoing among us. I don't want to say extroverts because that's overly simplified, but everyone, those of us who think out loud versus those of us who think a bit more quietly.
Exactly. And so it's one of those things where if we had those people who have the accounting minds or have the, let's sit and let's not react, because I'm a person of like, I have an idea, let's go, whereas other people who need to have that more of that thinking time, all that kind of stuff. And so having that balance, I think just makes it so much stronger. So we would actually like look at the 16 personalities, be like, okay, there's a whole bunch of us, not a surprise.
Where are we sitting on the wrong side of the
personalities?
Grid,
yeah. But we need to actually hire for some of these other things to make sure we have that perspective. And we need to encourage the people who have those different perspectives to share them. Like, I want to hear what you're seeing, because, even though you're maybe sort of in a minority amongst communication styles in this team, it's actually extremely important, especially right now, for me to hear what you're thinking. And if, say you're an introvert and I'm an extrovert, if you want to just even email me that afterwards, I'm cool with it. Like, I'll follow.
If you want to think about it till tomorrow and message me.
Communication style, but I still want to hear your thoughts, because that's going to make our project that much better.
In the companies you're working with, are people getting that? Because I think that there was oftentimes with more senior teams and some boards, they're like, this goddamn diversity thing. And they treat it like a checkbox exercise. But if you say, hey, would you guys want some fresh perspectives? Yeah, because we've got problems to solve we didn't have 6 months ago or 3 years ago. Are we hopeful that diversity is starting to mean maybe more? She's not shaking her head no. This is an audio podcast, but she is definitely shaking her head no. Okay, that was me. Hopefully I was grasping at an optimistic straw that when you say diversity, it's like, we need some people that can unpack this problem in a different way. And if they happen to be different race, different gender, different background, that's often where you're going to find that, because they came from a different background than you. Yes. But no, anyways, I keep wanting to reframe it in a way that maybe you're going to nod, but you're not.
Yeah. No, I love the idea. And again, I think it's important. Like as you know, I hire specifically, like even for me too. And again, like I want to make sure this isn't like a male thing either, right? Because I'm often guilty, and I know it's me, of hiring women because I know them, they're part of my community, or I get a referral or whatever, because and so I actually have to actively think about hiring men and be like, I need to check my bias.
But I like what you said. My community is mainly women, which makes sense. Like it's not even ill motivated. It just sometimes happens. And I get it. Sometimes I look around our company, I'm like, there's too many dudes. Like what? Yeah. We have a balance, but it happens to be who I know. Or even sometimes I've done 600 episodes of the podcast, and I have a couple of friends like, hey Tyler, I looked at your last three guys. I'm like, it's just the way it fell. Like and then it'll be all women. But it's the early days. I had to make a point because it tended to just be easier, and I didn't even realize it.
Exactly.
Back to your point about I had to be deliberate. And the second I put 1 minute of thought into it, it was easy to fix. But I didn't even see it. I had a blind spot.
Yeah, exactly.
And it sure as hell wasn't intentional, but I had to be intentional to make it not that.
Exactly. And then you get the difference, right? You get that variety of thought. Your podcast is going to be better simply because you have all these different.
I'm going to walk away going,
different views.
Thought about it that way. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I would do this if nobody else listened, because I get to have these kind of conversations. Yeah. I always walk away going, that's a new way to think about that. I like that. Yeah. But when you're working with teams, and oftentimes in marketing, you're under pressure. Yeah. There's never as much budget. There's never as much time. And there's always, like, I guess back to time, there's always a deadline. Yes. It's creating that little bit of space. And going in with that being your first filter, it's part of the first conversation, not oh shit, we didn't look at this ad. It's all white people. We didn't divert. Like just some of those times I've seen that happen at the end. I'm like, hey, did anyone ask this question before they picked this stock photo here? Exactly. And it's often a company that doesn't have access to their own library. So you grab a photo that works, which can take an inordinate amount of time to find a good photo. And then someone goes, wait a second, what's going on here? And you're like, but if you start with asking those questions in the brief, you have a higher chance of getting there more successfully at the end, right? Which means starting with intention, which I think goes all the way back to the beginning. What are our intentions and where do we want to be when we grow up? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And, I know we're getting to the end here, but, this also lends itself to some of the AI bias that we're seeing as well. And this is something that we all need to be aware of. This is actually one of my biggest concerns about AI.
The bias is in the machine. It's in the machine.
Exactly. Because, really, like when they're scraping all that data in order to create the content
from Reddit,
that's going out,
from Reddit,
which I could get into too, about the IP and all that kind of good stuff. But basically, what we're seeing then too is that when you think about who's actually commenting on things and putting things up, it's people who care either way, right? On either side of an, there's a lot of people who care, but they don't care enough to put out their comments. And so it's one of those things where we actually are seeing some of the more extreme views that are coming out, and that's sort of, what's being used as,
because that's who's fired up enough to put it on there.
Exactly. Instead of that sort of that middle group of people who care and have more of a moderate
which statistically is the largest group. Like
exactly.
Even if you look voting, there's the extreme right, the extreme left. Most times I talk to any like pundits or anyone who does some of that research, they're like, the middle is where it's the middle. It's what she said. It's the middle finger middle. I had somebody, Janet Brown told me once. She's like, because they're kind of giving the finger to both sides, but yet not necessarily taking enough of a stand to get out there and actually get as vocal as the right or the left side.
Exactly.
Janet Brown, I chatted with her about a few elections ago, and she said, I think that's what she called it. I may be misquoting you, so Jen, I apologize.
Oh yeah. No,
but it was the truth of like, here's where most people sit.
Exactly.
They just aren't as motivated to, like you said, to spout the rhetoric.
Yes, exactly. And we're also seeing too, some of the groups like our Indigenous communities, for example, have not been putting as much content up, and trying to find Indigenous photos has been a major issue for marketing, and things that are proper.
Well, the argument there is there's also a lot of groups that are speaking on their behalf, which I know may be well intended, but I again, the more closer I can get to the source, the better, more comfortable I am that I might be understanding 100%. What those people are actually thinking.
Yeah, exactly. I did a really cool presentation with a woman named Sharon Angus. She works for Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies, and she's an amazing Indigenous developer. And anyway, she's a wonderful human, and she actually did a live demo of AI on this presentation. And she said, show me a picture of an Indigenous person. And almost every one of them was a male, and also had a headband. And
unfortunately, my brain already knows what the photo looks like.
Exactly.
I can jump to, if I thought of a stereotypical photo that would be presented to me, I almost know what I would get.
And she's just like, that's not even us. That's a John Wayne invention. That's not even part of our culture. That was from the movies. That whole idea of a headband came. Yeah. And so that was really an impactful example for me of how that bias can get right in there. And, it's just going to be perpetuated because as AI builds on AI, all that kind of stuff. And so that for me is actually another important reason where I'd really like to ensure that we're seeing a lot of people who are underrepresented on the internet actually getting it out there so that they can see themselves represented in the future. And I think it should be coming to your point from source, from each community and spending that time. And so, it's an interesting, we need to solve some just general social issues on the internet.
Well, that's also the internet as infrastructure. Like we have communities in Canada that don't even have clean drinking water. They probably don't have high-speed internet. Like because if I have high-speed internet and you don't, in the world that we currently live in, I'm at an advantage and you're at a disadvantage. What I do with it is up to me, or so on and so forth. But that access and digital citizenship, and are we leaving a whole group of people behind just because they're not drowning in devices like you and I are right now with our high-speed internet and our phones, and the amount of information we're getting access to and can put out there. If you don't have high speed, if you don't have internet, well, you're not even having the same, it's almost like you're not part of the same society. And that's super problematic on every front, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Canada, do we also have one of the highest, is this an actual stat? I don't know, that our rural internet access is quite good in Canada. Is that correct? Or am I picking that
reasonably? Yeah. It's been a priority for a lot of governments to make sure, because we're also like, no matter which province you're in, there's a lot of rural communities here.
We are spread out. Absolutely.
We're a rural people.
We have a big geography with like scattered. Yeah, for sure.
So,
and I've heard that we do lead when it comes to, and obviously things like Starlink, but those are expensive. Like then then it's a financial barrier. Right?
Exactly.
$50 a month is no joke. But you can just get high speed from, Elon. Yeah, but it's expensive, right? And it doesn't make sense for everybody.
Yeah. And, we're seeing some in Saskatchewan. Again, I follow some of the clean energy spaces, but we have some Indigenous communities that are spending $900, $1,200 just to heat their houses in the winter. That's not an option. That's something you have to do to live.
It doesn't leave much room for anything else.
Yeah. And so anyway, so there's just, there are a lot of issues there. I think, I think we're probably in a better space than a lot of other countries, but I also think there's certainly communities and different places there that needs to be solved.
I appreciate knowing that we're doing okay, but let's do better. I'm probably like you. I'm like, okay, great. This is fine, but let's not celebrate too much. Let's move forward and try to.
Let's just finish this job and get her done.
Which is challenging because you've got provinces with different agendas. You've obviously got the federal versus provincial like rhetoric that goes on, which I don't know, seemingly we're, based on last week, the MOU and all that, seemingly like we're getting more aligned, but I don't know. Everyone just seems to be throwing mud at everything anyways. We're so addicted to the slinging shit at each other. But the problem is nothing. I grew up in Quebec, so I grew up through referendums and all that kind of shenanigans. And the biggest thing that you can look back on is what happened in the province during that time. Not much.
Right.
Everything
Yeah,
stalls.
because everything's so focused on
Everything
other
stalls,
things.
and companies don't want to invest because there's insecurity. And when you look at that at a national level, to your point of like, we need to move forward and we need to get aligned. It seems like we still struggle with that, right? So consequently, we talk about things for a lot of years, and X amount of years go by and no large capital projects get done. And it's hard to even get alignment on these smaller things. Sorry, not to end on a negative note. I'm like, so how do we do that? It's like, it's actually talking to each other and finding our common ground, not finding where we want to argue.
Yeah. Well, and I'll take that a little bit further, so we're not ending.
Please do. I was like, that went way too negative right there. I was like, I need to get downer,
also,
Tyler.
For me, the stuff I talk about when it comes to the ethics of what's going on in our space is that, that can be very negative because there's lots of statistics. There's a lot, we're seeing a lot of the negative effects, and they're very serious. So we want to address them in the next short while. But that's also to the other side where I said before, where when big change and with big chaos, there becomes big opportunity. And so I just think we need to be, kind of removing ourselves, looking at the things that we are doing right, doubling down on those, and really those starting to, for me, I think, take a leadership role in innovation in the world. I think there's just such an opportunity. We have some of the best university systems in the world. We have some of the best AI researchers in the world here in Canada. We've got just amazing entrepreneurs. We're hardworking people. I can like we're all people who are going to get this done. And a lot of us have farming backgrounds, that sort of thing. Like, we're not going to wait for someone else to solve this for us. We're going to go out and fix that fence. No one's coming to fix that. We got to get her done.
I know companies that hire people from Saskatchewan just because they're from Saskatchewan.
Oh, totally, 100%.
They're like, once I see where you're from Saskatchewan, I know you'll make it. You'll know how to get this done. Especially oil patch service companies, whenever there's work involved, they're like, hire someone from Saskatchewan. You're like, you already know you're 3/4 of the way there.
Exactly.
you might have to teach them the thing, but you already know they're going to work their ass off.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
I've heard that many times because I think it's true.
I think we have massive opportunity right now. Again, it's chaotic, it's scary, it's unknown.
But that's where the opportunity is, right?
If we decide to sort of take control and be like, here's our North Star, here's where we're going, here's where our organization is going, here's where our government's going, yes, it's scary. Yes, there's a lot of unknowns, but if we can sort of set that ideal for each of our, different areas of our worlds, I think we're going to really see some really cool things come out of this. Like, I think we're going to have mass change in the next little while. Let's just brace ourselves for that. But I also think there's, again, opportunity that comes out of change. And I feel like we can come out winners. Like, I feel like we just have everything in the right spot in terms of the people we have here in Canada, the education, the infrastructure, the energy. We have everything. We just need to really be harnessing that and being like, let's lean into our strengths. Who are we as Canadians and what can we do better? And I think we're going to have an awesome time here after all is said and done. But let's come back to this in 5 years and see where we're at.
Totally. Yeah, we're going to put a pin in it. Absolutely. I choose, you can choose optimism, which I do. Because at the end of the day, you're right. We have all the ingredients to make the cake, but we still have to get us all aligned in the kitchen. Because in the kitchen with 5 people is that's a tough time. Even if you have all the ingredients, I think we're just dealing with a little bit too many people bumping around in a small kitchen.
Yes.
Katrina, thanks for coming on. KatrinaGerman.com is your website. If people want to reach out to you, is that the best? That's the best
a good
platform?
one. Yep. Ethicaldigital.ca. We have a lot of our structures there. If you need corporate training, we'd love to come and help you and get your. One thing I love about the corporate training about this type of topics is everybody has an opinion. So it's a really fun training, and it just gets everybody aligned. So there's a lot of interesting things that we can be doing with people to really get this out there.
Oh, is this you trend with trust?
Trend with trust. That's us.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
This is a sexy site. I'm like, I see nothing but possibility on this website. So check out ethicaldigital.ca. Got me right away. I was like, ooh, I feel inspired. I feel like I could sit up on my chair on this website. I like it. Katrina, thank you for coming on. Thanks. We went on some rabbit holes. We went on some twists and turns, but it's a complex, messy conversation. So I appreciate your enthusiasm and your true optimism for the future. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tyler.